go, let go. I want to share with you that this is my very first Easter sermon. It's not the first sermon I've preached on Easter. However, I've done that several times before. But before, I've chosen to preach about rebirth or renewal or spring. I brought the story of the old man from Tibet as a memory of those preachings and a connection to that past. But a sermon about Easter, well, this is my first, so bear with me. And why? Why did I choose that today? Because I've come to realize in my time as a Unitarian Universalist that despite our affirmation that we seek wisdom from all the world's religions, our attitude towards Christianity is often expressed in less than mature or responsible ways. This is the tradition out of which our Unitarian and Universalist forebears grew, of course. And there are many people in our movement, there are people in this room, for whom the teachings of Jesus and the story of his life and death have great and transformative meaning. And this day, this is Easter. This is the day of days. And so, over the past few weeks, I've been reflecting on Easter, on the empty tomb and the stone rolled away. In much the same way as I reflected a few weeks ago on the meanings of the name of the tree story, digging into it and into my heart's response to it, to reflect on what meaning this great story, when taken seriously, might have for me or for us. And so I'll begin by sharing two tellings of part of that story from the Christian scriptures, found in the Gospels according to Matthew and Luke. This from Matthew. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised as he said. Come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has been raised from the dead. And indeed, he is going ahead of you to Galilee, and there you will see him. This is my message for you." So they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy, and ran to tell the disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." And they came to him, took hold of his feet, and worshipped him. And then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid." And from Luke. But on the first day of the week at early dawn, the women came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood before them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that he must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the 3rd day rise again." Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb, stooping and looking in. He saw the linen cloths by themselves, and then he went home, amazed at what had happened. I'd like now actually to step back a few days to the Friday before Mary Magdalene's discovery. The church I grew up in had a very powerful way of commemorating the death of Jesus on Good Friday. After a very solemn service, which included a group reading of the trial and crucifixion of Jesus, the clergy prepared the communion and shared it with the congregation. But rather than the usual closing forms of worship, a hymn, a prayer, a recessional, after each person received communion on Good Friday, they just wandered out of the church, one or two at a time, a family at a time, scattered, incomplete, disconnected, playing out the aftermath of the crucifixion, the dismay and disorientation of those who loved and had just lost Jesus. It was a painful and disconcerting ritual to participate in. It felt like something vital that held us together had died. That, then, in the Anglican tradition of my youth, was part of the meaning of death of Jesus, this grief and loss. Many Christians and many traditions have claimed their own reasons for Jesus' death. One of the meanings on which our tradition often focuses is a historical, social meaning. It is the conviction that Jesus was executed by the authorities of his day because he threatened the status quo. He was a rabble-rouser. He brought their authority into question. He mocked Roman ceremony and tradition by his arrival in Jerusalem sitting on the back of a donkey, lauded with palm fronds, in mockery of the olive branches of the Romans. He challenged the practices and called out the corruption of the religious authorities by overturning the tables of the moneylenders in the temple. You can imagine, occupy the temple. Right? British writer Dorothy Sayers said it this way: they did away with God in the name of peace and quietness. And I look around, and this is an important way to look at the story, but I look around at the world today, at my own life, and I feel like the Good Friday story is asking me an uncomfortable set of questions. What is it that I have killed in myself in order to maintain the status quo? What have I asked others to diminish in themselves for my safety and authority? Who has this society in which I participate and from which I so greatly benefit, who has it stifled and imprisoned and executed to maintain comfort? What vision have we darkened by looking away? What feelings have we deadened by building shields of food or drink or mindless entertainment or exercise or willful neglect? What sounds do we no longer hear? What hopes do we no longer entertain? What joy do we no longer dance within because we have needed to succeed or to protect or to make safe? What richness do we miss for safety's sake? What injustice do we not allow ourselves to see and react to in the name of peace and quietness? If you'll take your teal hymnal and turn to number 1011, we're going to sing a little bit in the middle of this. I'm going to sing the first line to you and ask you to sing it back to me, and then I'll sing the second line and have you sing it back to me as well. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Sing that again. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Sing that. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. But this is no longer Good Friday. The sun has set and risen and set and risen, and it's Easter morning. And the story told by the gospel writers tells us that Mary Magdalene did not find death that morning, but an empty tomb. In the church of my youth, again, on Easter morning, at a certain point in the worship service, the choir would leap up from their seats unannounced and ring dozens of bells. Large bells, small bells, deep bells, high bells, loud ones, quiet ones. Bells of joy and celebration and triumph about the defeat of death. But this is the part of the story so many of us have rejected. This miracle. This return to life after death. We explain it away as myth, as delusion. And I tell you, as I reflected on this story over the past weeks, my mind and heart returned again and again to that empty tomb. Not to the execution of a political troublemaker, or the decision of his distraught followers to take his teachings and spread them far and wide, but to that empty tomb and to those bells of my childhood. But the bells no longer sound only joyful and celebratory. In my inner ear, the hallelujah of their clanging is joined by the cry of, "Wake up. Wake up and see." That empty tomb calls to me. It calls me to return, to look, to awaken and see, to throw off the death of the spirit we've allowed to bind and entomb us, to rise up and embrace our true self. Our true self that knows that our visions bring freedom along with responsibility that we're trying to avoid. Our feelings bring joy along with the pain we're avoiding. That our bodies bring unimaginable strength along with the inevitable decay we're running away from. Our true self that knows that its wholeness is impossible in isolation. After the scattering at the end of the Good Friday story, there has to be coming together again. And that our health is dependent on the health of all. That our healing is connected to the healing of all. That our wholeness, our holiness, means nothing unless it is in service to the wholeness and holiness of all. All is not lost, this story tells us, however we understand its truth, however we understand how real it is or not. All is not lost, it says. The bells of Easter can awaken us. Even in the midst of the sameness and pressure of day-to-day living, we can, like that Tibetan man, make small changes that will change everything. That, to me, today, is the message of Easter, of that empty tomb. Even in death, there is life. Even in despair, there is hope. The Christian story recounts that Jesus, upon being reunited with his disciples, said, "Be not afraid." Fear is what entombs us. It traps our vision and our power and our life along with those things we are trying to avoid. The Easter story calls us to roll away the stone of fear and respond with passion and commitment to the needs of the world, to respond to the oppression we see and experience with deep justice and prophecy, to respond to the driving forces of separation we encounter in the culture of our society with the embrace of loving community, and to respond to the fear around us and within us with persistent, passionate hope and fierce love. Go in peace, my friends, to love and serve the world. May it be so. And now let's sing one more time